Mindset Mashup podcast, here we are, episode 1, series 2, and just for those that are listening right now, I'm here with my guest Rob, and I'm really looking forward to you guys meeting him, and we're going to introduce him in just a moment's time. But series 2 is really about business, entrepreneurship and leadership, and we're going to be talking about some tangible, practical actions that you can take. We're going to speak about the journey of startup businesses and what it feels like, and ultimately we want to have a nice conversation around this and try and give some hopefully motivation, inspiration, or maybe just some answers that you've been looking for that we can uncover throughout today. But without further ado, Rob, I just want to give you a short introduction just before I let you introduce yourself. But over 25 years in business, you had a lot of experience in the hospitality sector, I believe, and as you said, been an owner of a few businesses. Other than that, Rob, please introduce yourself. I just wanted to say that just in case you were too humble to say that yourself.
Well, firstly, I just want to say thanks for having me on the show, especially for episode 1. It's of series 2. It's a big honor. I really appreciate that side of it. But yeah, you've wrapped it up well. I somehow managed to stay 25 years in the hospitality industry, and the most recent one was 3.5 years as the CEO of a hotel company in the UK. Worked through the pandemic. It was a pretty tough time, but and now I moved over to the US and started my own thing, man. I feel like I'm on a new path. I'm a startup myself. I'm on ramen noodles every week, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
I think I love what you said there about just sort of like the startup and the ramen noodles, because I think it's so important when you start up to enjoy that process and enjoy that there's going to be some challenges. I know it's easy to look at things on Instagram or social medias and be like, oh, it's easy starting a business. You can just start earning money and you can just start doing this. And the elements of what they say are true, but it does require a lot of hard work and a lot of dedication. And ultimately, there's going to come some challenges and hardship with that, just the same as anything else, really. And I really look forward to uncovering some bits on this podcast that I think are going to be valuable for not only myself, but hopefully the people listening too. Something that you and I spoke about, Rob, was what you're not taught at school. And I think owning a business, entrepreneurship, failure are things that are new subjects to a lot of people out there. I certainly didn't hear the word entrepreneurship when I was at school, or starting a business or those sort of things. And just to ease into this conversation, what do you think is the worst piece of advice that you've had during your school years?
Do you know what? I'm gonna draw on something that you just said. There's a lot of shit on the internet. Excuse my language. I hope you don't mind me saying that. Are we PG or anyway? Yeah. But you know, one of the worst things I hate on the internet is when you see a company that says, drop shipping is a great example. I'll build you a website. It's a ready-made store, and you can have your own business in 3 days, and it'll be £120 or whatever it might be. And that's great. In fact, if you had £30 or £40, you could probably go and start a Shopify website yourself, use a template, and upload some designs you did off a drop shipping site in a day. You probably don't even need to do it in 3 days. But that's not building a business. The reality is, to build a business, you've got to build a brand. You've got to build an audience, and you've got to have people start to be your fans and your heroes and love you. And it can't just be your brother and sister or your cousin. That's not enough to build a business with. It takes years. And drop shipping, as an example, because I see that one a lot. And I run a couple of drop shipping businesses. But the reality is, year one of a drop shipping business, you're not going to make any money. In fact, if you're really going to build your brand and you're going to invest a lot in marketing, you're probably going to lose money over that first year. The second year, you'll probably break even, and maybe you'll make a little bit of money. And the third year is really once you've built your audience, you've done everything right in year one and year two, you've got a good database, you've got a good following on social media, you'll start to make some money. You understand the products that work, the products that don't work, you'll start to make some money. It takes 3 years. So one of the things that really sort of, I guess, triggers a bit of an annoyance in me is to see those ads on social media all the time to say, hey, drop quit your job and get a drop shipping business in a day, because that's kind of what it suggests. You can have a business in 3 days. You're going to be broke in about 3 months, or how much savings you've got, and you're going to be back to that job if you do that. So I always say to anyone I'm talking to, a friend, whoever who wants to start a business, is keep your job and start it, establish it, and you'll have to put a lot of effort into it, but it takes years to build a really loved brand and an audience that you need to sustain it.
And I think but it just doesn't sound sexy though, does it? It doesn't. Like 3 to 5 years, that then you'll be okay if you can deal with like the mental toughness that is required in order to actually become successful. It doesn't sound as sexy, does it? And I know a lot of people, especially startups, and I'm more than happy to say this because I've tried drop shipping, I've tried lots of different things, and I've failed at many, which is absolutely fine with me. But I've also, reflecting back, I've learned a lot. But when I was hearing these things, people say stuff like you and I are saying now, I was always reluctant to like absorb and believe what they were saying, because I didn't want to believe it was that hard. But I think now, I don't know if it's social media or if it's us as people, expectations. I don't know if it's too high or too low, maybe, this ideology of winning overnight. And I think if you want to start a business, and a successful business, as you said, it does require building up that brand, building up that audience, and working towards the success rather than falling into it overnight or over a week. And that's something that really relates to me. I've spent the last 18 months just focusing on building an audience, nothing else. I'm not trying to sell anything. I think I've done one event virtually, which is paid for, but the rest I'm just worried about. I've got a full-time job, so I don't need the money. I want to build up a business, so I'm focusing on the audience, as you said. Rob, I know your business that I really like the sound of was Grind Equity. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I was working I had a really comfortable job with great pay in the UK, and it was all good, but I just felt small things started to bother me in that role. As a CEO, you're still answerable to a board, and I'd find the board meetings frustrating, and I'd find I was really hamstrung on what I could do or couldn't do, and it just wasn't. And I realized that things were frustrating me that shouldn't frustrate somebody. There's such a small thing, and it was making me anxious and annoyed. And I realized that I wasn't really connected to that business. That business wasn't mine. I didn't start it, and I didn't really connect to the purpose behind it. It was a great business, and I don't speak illy of the business. And actually, I have great relationships with all the board members, but I just didn't feel like it was my purpose. So what it got me thinking about, well, what is it that I think I can offer on this planet? That I always think about a movie, right? If your life was a movie right now, would someone make a movie about my life? Hell no. There's nothing that exciting, but that's a great place to start, because if you sit down and go, right, if I want to do something impactful in this world and leave a legacy, and it's not that you want people to talk about you or write about you, but you want to make a difference for good, and that's going to help you sleep at night in the best possible way, and that's going to help you get up in the morning, and that's going to be the thing when you talked about it before, setback after setback after setback. Man, that's business. Like that is, it can be a pain, it can be a drag. At the moment, I'm trying to set up a bank account in the US, and I must have attempted to set one up 15, 20 times, and I'm just constantly hitting barriers. I think a lot of people at that stage would just go, this is too hard, and just throw the towel in. But what keeps me doing it is I really connect to Grind Equity, because what it's there to do is to invest and support entrepreneurs who want to change the world. And I want to invest my time and energy and effort into entrepreneurs who have a purpose behind their business. Their business is not just, I want to make money. The business is, hey, I want to set up these farms that you can run in cities that will save the environment in the future. And man, I want to help with that, because that's amazing. Or I want to solve a problem of the world that really needs solving, help areas that don't have enough education. Or I just came off a call, I was just telling you, with a charity who go into communities and help them set up farming cycles that then they set up businesses against. So it's not just to feed themselves, but also to sustain their community long term. That's the sort of stuff that I want to get involved in, because I feel connected to it. And that's what Grind Equity is all about. It's about having a higher purpose and feeling connected to it. And I'm like you, man. I'm building the audience. I haven't made a penny out of it. That's right now. My goal is just to build that audience and build that community. And man, we're going to do great things.
But that's the part of it. That's the hustle, though, isn't it? Like, that's what we need. We need to understand that that's part of it. You're not just going to start up a business and the next day you start earning money. And if you do, that's great. But sustaining it is another story. And that's where it is. It comes to building up the audience. And I love what you said about the setbacks and what you said about writing the story. Like, that starts now. Like, that's something I often say. If you don't know where to start where you are. Like, that's the 100%. Perfect place to start, man. Like, we can just, wherever we are in our life, whatever journey, whatever's happened in the past, if you're still breathing, that's an opportunity to start again. Plus, however many years experience you've got living on this earth already, because we're consumers already. We all consume, whether that's products, content, services. So we understand a little bit anyway, as it is. But we have to understand the people that we see in business, they've been grinding for a lot longer than what we're about to grind, at least where we start. And I also love what you said about sort of just loving those setbacks and embracing them, because for me, once we give up, that's where I don't like the feeling of not knowing what happens if I give up. I like to know that I can keep going, and that often provides motivation for me. The fact that I think, you know what, I'll keep going. I'm just going to keep going, one step at a time, keep going. And Rob, I just want to come back. I really like this things you're not taught at school part concept, because I think there's a lot. School wasn't for me, but I'm a huge believer in education now. And if I went back, I think there's a few things I would have changed about my attitude towards it, to be fair. But we can't do that, so that's why I'm making some corrections now, you know. But some things that I put down about not taught at school is we're not taught how to fail.
Yeah.
We're not taught to never give up. But something that I saw on, I believe it was Instagram, was someone said the most frustrating thing about school is that the way that you're taught means there's only one route to success, which is passing an exam in the context of school. And that really resonated with me, that there's only one route, which is if you have to pass the exam in order to get the certificate. I was just wondering if there's anything there that you think, that I agree with that, or I've got something to say about that.
Well, I failed. Man, I failed badly. So, without going too far into detail, my parents were youth missionaries, and we had that meant we moved around a lot. And they were very philanthropic. So my father would teach disadvantaged kids or kids from troubled backgrounds, or they just got into trouble. They might not come from troubled backgrounds, but they just mixed with the wrong crowd. And he would teach them farming skills, and my mum would help them from a counselling point of view. And that's really cool, but that put me in some really difficult situations at times. And man, I mean, I'll give you one example just because it's just to put some illustration behind it. I remember one time I was about 13 years old, and a buddy of mine were in my house, and there was a guy there. He came from a broken family, and he was pretty mixed with the wrong crowd. And he clicked. I can't remember what the situation was, but he clicked and he wasn't happy, and he pinned me down. I was a 13-year-old guy. He was about 20 years old at that time.
Oh, wow.
He pinned me down, and he had a sewing needle over top of me, and he was ready to stab me. And I could see behind me was a can of insect spray, and I reached and I just got this insect spray in time, and I sprayed it in his eyes. And he jumped back, and my mate pushed him off, and I was able to run out the door and get away. My own house, I'm talking about here now.
Yeah.
Now, when I tell you how serious this is, this guy in 2001 in July was convicted of murdering his own friend. He stabbed him to death. So this is a serious situation, a serious kid, and that's when you're growing up and that's your house. You don't feel safe in your own house. That has a big impact on a teenage kid.
Yeah.
That's just one of many stories. It's just so what happened was I became, I lost focus at school, and my grades suffered badly, and and I failed badly. But I always had the ability to. Why I call it grind equity is I always took jobs when other people didn't want to take them. So I'd say, yeah, look, I'll take it. I don't care about the pay. So I'd take the job for way less than what the pay was meant for. And I've pretty much done that my whole career. And the company's like, well, hey, we get someone who's really motivated to into a new role and we don't have to pay them as much. So they got something out of it. I got something out of it. And I call it grind equity because, I worked my way to the top through grinding for way less pay than everyone else did. I never complained about it. I never moaned about it. And that got me ahead. But, coming back to what you're not taught at school, that was a lot I wasn't taught at school because I just disconnected with it. So you think about starting a business. I don't know about school in the UK, but in Australia, we have work experience for 2 weeks and you go and you work in a company. So you're almost ingrained that that's what you do. When you finish school, you do your exams, you go to university and you go and work for a company, or you do a trade, but you go and work for somebody. No one actually teaches you how to set up a company, how to open a bank account for that company, how to set up a tax structure. All the really practical stuff is never taught.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to really get into the Grind Academy. And just coming back, I want to just quickly comment on the point you made about the grind at the early days of a business. Man, that's when you learn to budget. That's when you learn how tax works. That's when you learn you'll make mistakes, but they're not mistakes that will end your business because you're still small enough to recover. You got to value those times because you're going to learn so much. Don't fast forward on those times.
Yeah.
They're the best times of all, but anyway, I'm getting carried away with that one.
I think we should go into that. I think we should go into that part of it because I think often we spend so much time trying to get out of a situation to be in a better situation when actually what we can gather and what we can learn from the situation we're currently in is what can propel us forward. It's almost like a catapult if we absorb the information that we're learning. Because as you said, when you're a small business, you can afford to make some mistakes that you might not be able to afford in 7 or 8 or 9 years' time when the business is built up. And as we make those mistakes and learn more, I believe it shouldn't be a thing of, if I could just be here, then these things wouldn't happen. It'd be like, this is teaching me for when I'm here.
Yeah.
And
embrace that.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel we can all be guilty of that sometimes, like trying to escape and avoid tough situations to get better ones. But when we learn to embrace it, when we learn to look for the lessons within that, I believe that's when we can start to grow. And that's when I think we can get smarter with our grind as well, because that's another thing as a startup. I feel like I've noticed in me, and as I'm saying this, I feel like it resonates more, is focusing so hard on the end goal instead of understanding where I'm at, what I can take from where I'm at in order to get to the next step, because I was looking too far ahead. What do you think of that situation?
I do agree, man. I think we're almost ingrained to say, right, I'm a big fan of visualization and where do you want to be? Yeah. I agree with that. I subscribe to that theory, but you're not going to get there tomorrow. There's a bunch of steps that it takes to get there, and you've got to have that eye on the end goal. But the biggest, most important goal you've got to have is the next one you've got to reach.
Yeah,
because that's in the future. The one you've got to be really motivated, and the one you've got to be driven around is the one that you need to do today. What's got to be done by the end of today? I got to get that done.
Yeah, and I think those could be really small steps as well. That's something that's come up for me over the last year. As you said, I quite enjoyed the working towards something. Like I really need that. That sort of like, and that took me a while to establish that as well. Really focus on where I wanted to go, and where I think about where I am, when the next step wasn't always clear, my goal was to stay focused and not be distracted, rather than think about, I need to do this, I need to do that. Be like, right, let's get focused. Let's not get distracted. Let's sit down. Let's get some things out, because sometimes that step is the next step. It's like going back to the drawing board. That's an expression I often hear when I'm speaking to different entrepreneurs and people that are of high performance, which I think you speak to a lot of people high performance as well, Rob. I've seen your podcast. You've got Olympians. You've got sort of high performance coaches, and out of all your discussions with them, what do you feel is the most valuable pattern that you noticed in all of them?
You know what? Every single one of them has a clear, structured routine, and that's it's just so important. Going back to what you just said, going back to that basic and working out what your focus is, and I think it's almost got a bit of a stigma attached to it, and it shouldn't. But a journal is just. I think people think of journal and they probably think of Anne Frank or something like that. But you know, the journal for me, I mean, every morning I sit down and think about what I did yesterday that I was happy about, that it was good, and it's training your mind. That training a positive mindset is so important, and that's a critical part of training a positive mindset, is sitting down and really taking the time to think about it. I think it's something I think there's a misconception in the world is if you work hard, you're going to get rich. I know loads of people who are working. I think that's a bit of a kick in the teeth, because there's a lot of people who work hard. I pretty much don't know anyone who doesn't work hard. It's about thinking hard, and I think that's the bit that most people miss. And starting the day with a journal in the morning, it's not about sitting down and writing down an Anne Frank diary. It's about saying, right, this is what I'm really happy about, and this is what's gone well, and this is what I'm going to do today. These are the things I'm going to do today, and then at the end of the day, picking it up and going, yeah, I did that, and I didn't do that, or I'll carry that over. But it adds a structure to your life that is critical for success. And every single one of them, I've had NFL players on there. I'm only up to episode 9, so it's not that much, but every single one of them have a routine and a structure. And I think that's again, never taught at school. I was never told about a journal other than Anne Frank's diary. So it's, and that's, I think it's got a stigma that it doesn't deserve.
And I think as well, people can sometimes get a bit too, what's the word, like a little bit too flowery with it. Like, people think that it's all about writing gratitude and writing it could be whatever you need it to be. And I'm really big on making things your own. My younger brother got me a journal. I think it was a present of some sort. And I've never really been big on journaling, although I have done it. What I did like about it was this particular saying. They were like, what the diary does is it allows you to understand where your energy is going and where your energy is not going. Yeah. So for me, that was really attractive, because I thought, as you said, working hard doesn't equal success, but thinking hard and having a good thinking structure and good thinking patterns is what separates successful people to unsuccessful people. And as I always say, when I talk about success, I'm not just talking about wealth, because that to me is not just the ultimate success. There's plenty of other things around that can make you successful without finances. And when I started understanding this concept of understanding where my energy goes, I started to understand the value of understanding what was giving me a high amount of energy, what was giving me a low amount of energy. So the things that were high energy, I could lean into those to move forward. But the ones that were low energy, I could see if those were having an impact on the result that I was getting at that moment in time. So, for example, some of the things that's been on my low energy bit was admin work. I don't enjoy admin work because I'm a doer, because I like seeing results, and I'm very results driven. And at times that's to my strength, at times that's to my weakness, much like a lot of the skills that we have, right? And what I started to notice is, as time went on, is a pattern of not like doing admin work, but it still needs to be done. So I then created a structure around that, but I wouldn't have understood that if, as you say, I didn't understand where my thinking was. Yeah. But that's what I like about the journal, because it gets you to become more self-aware.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think we as men, and we're probably the worst for it as well, because we don't really sit down and think about, well, how did I feel today? And that, for me, that moment in the morning, it's that chance to let all my thoughts be still and look at them objectively, rather than getting fired up and getting emotional about them. And when you can sit back and look at them objectively, because they're written down on a piece of paper. I don't even write them down, man. I got tick boxes because I hate that stuff.
But that's okay too. Yeah. Like that's what I mean. I'm not a fan of these 2 steps and you'll be this, 3 steps and you'll be this, because again, I just believe that there's no that what we do know is that there's certain thinking patterns and structures which help people to become successful, but Rob's 2 steps and this person's 2 steps might be very, very different.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is something that's very new to me, by the way. A lot of the time I've sort of done what people have advised in these, like the authority figures within the industry, and they're really useful. But what I started doing is making them my own, and I've started seeing really good results from this, because when you make it your own, that's when you can really start building, and also I think that's when you can start really enjoying it.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on that anyway, and that's really been true to me, because I think a lot of the time we get caught up listening to other people a bit too much, which can knock us down, because if we do it their way and we can't stick to it, we start beating ourselves up, you know.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it comes back to what you just said. Once you work out what your way is, that's self-awareness, and that's the first step in building a successful mindset anyway. So I think you're right. Do what makes sense for you. And I'm not good at writing down, so I do tick boxes.
But I like that though. I like that. I think the tick box is something I might even have to consider, like just design some tick boxes. And I think that was actually on the journal, like there's 2 bits of it which were tick boxes. And so, well, we're here to talk about leadership, about business, about entrepreneurship. For you, when I say the word leadership, what comes up for you?
Man, there's so much to this question. I think if we take an example of, I wish I learned more about leadership at a younger age, because I was a manager for a long time in leadership roles, and I think I damaged some people with how aggressive I was. And leadership is all about the soft skills, and I was all about, right, this is what's got to be done, and this is what's got to be done to achieve that. That's a manager. Okay, I have to, I don't know, there has to be in hotel world, we check all the reservations on the day of arrival. So you'd say, well, I have to check all the reservations on the day of arrival. So I'll just make sure it gets done. So there's a person who's assigned to that. There's a process for it, get it done. And then if they didn't get it done, I'd be on their case. Right, you know what? You're out of here, or you're getting a written warning, and I'd be hard ass about it. And in actual fact, what a leader would be they'd have a relationship with that person, and they'd understand what's going on in their life. And, you know, maybe someone come in and they're caring for their mum at home, and they've had a tough night and they haven't had much sleep. And if I knew that, if I had a relationship with that person and I knew that, then I wouldn't give them that task, because I know they're not going to be concentrating, or they know they're not going to get it done. And that's leadership. Leadership's getting to know people and really understanding what's their drivers and what's going on in their life, that you can protect them in some ways, but also, you know, make sure that you don't put them in a position that they can fail, you know, they can fall over. And I think that's the difference, is building that relationship, understanding that person, and building a structure around them that makes them successful. And I didn't learn that for far too long in my career. And I think I regret some of those things, but here's what I say about regret. I think you have I used to look at it as a badge of honor. You know, I get shit done. If no one stands up to the task, I get rid of them. And I used to wear it as a badge of honor, and then it became a badge of regret. And then it became, you know, at that point, the badge of honor goes, and the badge of regret comes. Then it became a badge of learning. And at that point, the badge of regret goes, because you realize, hey, I learned from that situation. And then now I'd say it becomes what I call a badge of experience, because now I had the badge of honor when I thought that was cool, and I realized now I was a dick. And then I had the badge of regret, that I thought, well, if I walk around with regret forever, I'm never going to get over this. Then I took the badge of learning. Okay, I can learn from this. That's a good thing. And the badge of experience then becomes, you know, you hear this on job interviews all the time. We want experience. What they really want is someone who's already messed up. So, so I think I got plenty of mess ups.
Yeah, I like that as well. And I think leadership has that. I think we do need to have that leadership, those leadership conversations, because they're so important to it. And like what you said about soft skills, because I think that is where leadership is it's easy to tell someone what to do. It's easy to go hard on them when they haven't done it. It's easy to sack someone. What's not easy, I believe, is developing someone into themselves, which benefits both yourself as the employer or the CEO, but also them as a person and an individual. Because I think I was listening to this where this sort of attitude come from a certain individual. I think it was maybe been Steve Jobs, who was renowned for not treating his staff very nicely. Yeah. And I think that sort of rubbed off into the corporate world, because he achieved incredible results, and people wanted to mimic that. And obviously they found out how he treated the staff, and people went in. I'm not sure if that's how it started, but it can make sense why that sort of caused a domino effect. But then now we've got this whole big thing around mental health, around well-being, but also how much of an impact that has on the performance of your employee, which we can build, as you said, through rapport building, through not being a dick, I suppose, and actually taking time to develop someone, taking time for their own development, because we don't want to do that often, do we? We just want to be like, you do this, you do that, get it done, because although that achieves short-term results, it may not achieve long-term ones.
Yeah, absolutely agree. There's a saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I absolutely subscribe to that now, because I didn't in the past, but I understand that now.
Yeah, that's an African proverb, isn't it? And I love that. I love that one too. So Rob, if you were speaking to a leader right now, that was like, do you know what? I sort of understand what you're saying, and I understand that, but at the moment I'm achieving results. What approach would you say to someone that's currently achieving results, which could help them make that transition from I'm a tell a man what to do sort of guy, and swap that into the sort of mindset that we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think even if you're that person and you're achieving results inside, I don't think you're entirely comfortable with yourself. You'll go home, perhaps you'll keep an exterior and you'll never admit it, but internally you'll never be truly satisfied. And I think that will keep you awake at night. So I think it's an inner voice that you've got to listen to and understand to change. And I would say to somebody like that, I mean, I'm trying to think of an example of one. Steve Jobs. Let's take Steve Jobs. On his deathbed, he said some things that kind of contradicted all of that stuff that he lived. What is it all worth at the end of the day? And you might have got the job done, but who's going to remember you for that, and how are they going to remember you for that? And is that how you want to be remembered?
And I think that's that's super important, because often that's what it's about in the end, isn't it? It's about what you've left behind and how you treated people. It's not about, when I'm going to say what you left behind, I'm really talking about that legacy rather than the amount of money you leave behind or how big your business is. Like, those things are all cool, but if you treat people like crap throughout the journey, you've made people sort of not want to show up to work or treat their family like crap because they're so much under pressure at work, all you've actually done is just get result through not being a good person. And I think there's a lot of one of my favorite people to listen to is Gary Vaynerchuk, because he really talks about kindness within leadership and actually how empathy and patience can really sort of what you said, really about making sure those soft skills are there, because they're really the hard skills. He often says that, and that's what gets the job done. And that's sort of why I wanted to do this, because a lot of my audience is they're young entrepreneurs, and a lot of them have got really, really amazing talent, and there's likelihood that these people can be bosses one day to a lot of people. And I thought, why not have these conversations around leadership, because it is about that. And I think what I would say to someone like that could be making that transition, you might be making a result now, but if you were to switch, what would happen to that result?
Yeah.
Because if you start treating people nicely, you're not going to get a worse result.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And if you do, that's an even better place to start.
Yeah.
Because then you can build up and you can learn.
And I love what you said about success. I mean, success is everyone's own definition, and I'd say. I know if you think about Mother Teresa, I mean, she didn't die with a lot of money, but I would say her life was a pretty massive success.
Yeah.
So it's how you define it, and people remember her for the right reasons. And Steve Jobs, he left a legacy and he did some incredible stuff, but him himself admitted on his deathbed that he wished he'd done it differently.
Yeah, and that was quite an emotional. There was quite a long emotional statement that he said.
Yeah.
And I really felt for the guy, and it really puts it into perspective as well, I think, for people that are still around. And I suppose that brings us back to what you said at the start. If you're still alive, then you can make that change because you've got the opportunity to, thankfully. And well, I'm big on mindset. I'm really big on mindset. I think it's the key, it's the asset, it's something that I believe can change someone's world. And I think it's also one of the most underutilized tool that we use as people as well. And I know you're quite a big on you're big on mindset too. And part of the mindset industry, I suppose, that you hear a lot of is enjoy the process or believe in the process. And I'm just wondering what that means to you.
Well, I think the process comes back. For me, the process is getting up and going through the journaling practice each day. And that's easy to drop off from that. It's easy to have a night out. You've had great dinner, you get up in the morning, you go, I don't want to do it in the morning. And they're the times for me that you go, actually, you know what? This is the time I've got to do it. This is the time where the process becomes really important. And it doesn't happen overnight. That for me is, I'm also pretty late bloomer to that sort of thing. But for me, that's what provides structure in my life. And that's what's provided me to, there's no way I would have made a role as CEO if I didn't have a plan and I didn't have a structure around it and I didn't stick to that structure every single day. And no matter if you're hungover or you've had a late night, whatever it is, you keep the discipline of sticking to that process. And man, I just, you say this so many times and I still know majority of my friends don't do it. And it's hard when you believe it so much and you've experienced it and you've found success out of it and you want to tell everyone about that. But people have got to come to their own decision to do it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But for me, that's what the process is. The process is getting up and keeping that consistency every single day. It's worked for me so well. And, I'd love other people to do it if that works for them. But I think they've got to discover it themselves.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I think I like what you said. You can't make someone want what they don't want at the end of the day. No. And that's why I'm a firm believer of like not just taking on everything that you hear and doing it verbatim, where you can make it your own. But I really believe in structure too, and I really believe in the process. And for me, the process is about something that's my own, something that you can sustain. I'm big on sustainability as well, and something that is going to be success, that can create success. So getting up at 10 o'clock each morning, that you've missed a lot of hours in the day. Maybe you're not, unless you make those hours up in the night. Maybe, I don't know. But for me, it's up nice and early, and it's making the most and making sure that the main thing is the main thing. And that's why I love the process. And I think the process is taking along. I thought I understood it about 2-3 years ago, but I didn't. I do understand it now. And I believe the reason why I understand it is because my habits, my mindset and my behavior aligns with the end goal. And for me, that's what gives me more trust and belief in the process, because your mindset oversees all of that. Your mindset oversees the attitudes, the beliefs and things like that. Rob, I'm also, as I said, I'm keen on mindset. I want to stay on this for a little bit. How do you deal with failure?
You've got to embrace it, man. I mean, I would say in my life, I've learned more from the failures than I have. It shouldn't be that way, because I think you should sit back and reflect, and that's where journaling comes in. I don't want to harp on it, but you should sit back and reflect on good and bad situations. But by nature, as humans, we're impacted more by the bad situations than we are by the good situations. They're the ones that we repeat in our mind. They're the ones that we end up playing on our subconscious. And so for me, the failures that I've had, I mean, man, I could sit here and write a book about how many failures I've had. But, one for me was, I remember I got put into a role in earlier on in my career, and I was out of my depth. I went too quick, and I didn't have a structure around, right, how am I going to deal with this? If I had my time again, I'd still take it, but I'd just approach it differently. And I didn't. And I ended up on a stage in front of a group of, a couple of countries had come together, all the managers of all these hotels. And I ended up on a platform in front of them with a presentation that was just useless, crashed and burned. And I just remember, I'll never, ever forget that feeling. I don't remember the good presentations I made, but there were plenty, but I remember that one. And, from that, it forced me to go away. We were talking about it before. It's when you hit those rock bottom moments, that's when you really search your soul and go, what did I do wrong? And really analyze it and understand, right, this is what I've got to do to change, because otherwise I'm going to do that again. And I don't want that again. So it's almost like a coping mechanism. Your body says, it's like when you touch a hot, when you're a little kid and you touch the hot stove, it burns you and you go, oh, I'm not going to do that again because it burnt me. Well, standing in front of the stage was me touching the hot stove, and I was like, I'm not going to do that again. And from that moment, it was like, right, I'm going to put some structure around my job and the goals that I want to achieve every day. So there was, when I say goals, it's sort of a bit of a fantasized word a little bit. It's just a list. It's just my phone's full of lists. It's just, right, what am I going to get done today? A list. And that's when I started doing that, it made a huge difference. And I just knew I never wanted to stand in front of people and fail like that again. So, that's, for me, it's a big learning curve, and embrace them and learn from them, use them to your power.
How did you go about embracing them?
Well, that night I went home and there was a dinner and I didn't go because I was too embarrassed. So there was, after the initial shock of feeling like a bit of an idiot, it was like, right, I need to look at what I'm doing because I'm clearly way out of my depth. So how do I get into a position where I know what I'm talking about and I'm confident to stand on stage? So it was really a step-by-step process to go, right, well, I need to read a few books. I need to start researching Google, man. Far out. I love Google. It's the best resource in the world. Start researching and reading. So for me, it drove me down a path of reading and learning and getting better at my craft, so that next time I stood on stage, I was ready. I was there before everyone else turned up in the room next time I stood on stage, because I knew what I was going to say.
So, I bet you killed it as well.
I don't know. I can't remember it, to be honest. It wasn't that. I remember the one I failed.
Yeah, but I'm. God, sorry, Rob, carry on.
No. I mean, I don't remember. It means I probably did okay.
Yeah, I suppose. Do you know what, Robert? I know we're saying this, and it sounds quite easy, like these things, but it's actually confronting yourself is difficult. Looking yourself in the mirror and going, "You messed up there, man. You messed up there. What are you going to do about it?" Because that's the hard bit. What are you going to do about it? Because then you're taking accountability of everything that you've done, and that's admitting that you failed. And I think there's so much greatness in that. So often our egos just step in the way of that, and we're like, I wasn't prepared because I wasn't trained enough. I wasn't prepared because they put me off. I wasn't prepared because I had a late night. And there's so many excuses. Often they're valid, but I think we need to. You're never going to not get excuses in your head. It's our choice to listen to those excuses. What really matters, And I think, if anyone can take anyone from for anything that what's just been said there, I believe the most important bit is, don't be afraid to confront yourself. As Rob said, there's no excuse that you can't learn anymore. We have Google, we have the things like Audibles, like £7 a month, where you have unlimited amount of books that you can go through. You go through 12 books a year. Like, there's no excuse for not knowing anymore. There's just no excuse. As you said, how to be a leader in Google, how to public speak in Google, how to create a personal brand in Google. Yeah. We need to use these resources. Like, what are you doing? You can't be making excuses when we've got everything at our hands. And literally at our hands. Like, it's not even like we had to log onto a computer now and take 15, 20 minutes for it to load up.
On your phone.
Yeah, exactly. Jump on your phone, straight in. Rob, I want to bring this to... Sorry, Carol.
No, I was going to say, it's turning those badges of regret into a badge of learning, man. I think that's the key of failure.
Yeah, and I think, do you know what, Rob? I absolutely love that, and I completely agree with that. It's don't settle with failure like that. I feel like that's what I'm going to put. That's what I'm going to put on top of that. Like, don't settle. You're going to fail. It's inevitable. We cannot make everything right. We absolutely can't, and you're not meant to. And if you are, question yourself because you're definitely not. We're meant to fail, and we're meant to keep going. The ultimate failure is giving up, and but how we move forward depends on what we learn from the failures that already happened. Rob, I want to start bringing this to an end. As I said, time's precious. I know it's midday where you are. I mean, it looks quite sunny where you are. I don't know. I can sort of see a bright light in the background.
Yeah.
And I don't want to keep you much longer. But first of all, plug your socials, plug your website so people know where to find you.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. So grind-equity.com is the website, and there's links there to the podcast, which is the Grind Academy, and it's all about, as you said, it's all about what you don't get taught at school. So it's all in there. The podcast there, all episodes are live. The Instagram site is grind.equity. So I'd love it if you're listening to give us a follow.
Yeah, please do, guys. And I've listened to a few of the podcasts, and they're really good. They're really good. As Rob said, this NFL players, sports backgrounds, and there's a lot we can learn from sports athletes that we can bring into our life that they needed during their grind. So, Rob, is there anything that you want to finish up on to give some people some practical actions maybe someone could take away that's starting a business?
Yeah, I mean, man, just stick to it. Like we've spoken about it. Stick to the process, and it's not going to happen overnight. You know, you're going to face so many failures, and we all do. I mean, you and I are probably at the same point right now. We were building an audience, and it's tough. You just got to keep going. And sometimes you record a podcast, and 30 or 40 people listen to it, and it's nobody likes it or anything like that. And it's just keep going. You know, like don't ever give up. I think at school we get. The currency at school is all about how fast you are or how good you play sport or how good looking you are. And in reality in life, man, that counts for very little. It's how resilient you are, how your ability to just keep going and not give up. And you know, when a bank says no to setting up a bank account and 2 say no, 3 say no, 15 say no, you'll find one. Just keep going. And that's probably, for me, that's the summary of business.
I completely agree. Rob, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for your time. And hopefully we'll see each other again soon. Maybe we'll catch up on another podcast in a few months. Check in where each other are. But yeah, guys, if you're still listening, I'm so grateful for your time. Press subscribe on the YouTube. Go follow me on Instagram at Real Talk George. And I look forward to seeing you there. But for now, keep hustling, keep shining. God bless you all. Let's go.